She had always been quiet in the crowded music room, the kind of student who blended into the background. She arrived early, sat down at the old piano in the corner, and began to practice the pieces that everyone already knew she could play. The notes were simple, the rhythms easy, and yet she poured herself into them with a careful patience. To anyone else, it might have seemed like ordinary practice, but she treated each note as if it mattered more than anything else in the world. The music room smelled faintly of wood polish and sheet music, and sunlight streamed through the tall windows, falling on her hands as they moved across the keys. She loved that quiet space, away from the chatter and expectations of others. Teachers often glanced her way with a nod of approval, but no one ever lingered. They assumed she was content playing simple pieces that wouldn't challenge her or anyone watching. She didn't mind. She liked being unnoticed. It made her feel free to explore the music at her own pace. Her peers, on the other hand, were more outgoing, more eager to show off their skills. They often played complex pieces, hoping for applause and recognition. They didn't understand why she chose the simple melodies, why she didn't push herself in ways that would make her stand out. But she wasn't interested in standing out. She was interested in the music itself, in the way each note could convey something deeper than words. When she played, she felt alive, like she was telling a story that only she could understand. On this particular morning, the room was quiet except for the gentle sound of her piano. A teacher walked in, carrying a stack of sheet music. He watched her for a moment, smiling slightly. She looked up and nodded politely, then returned her attention to the keys. She didn't play to impress him or anyone else. She played because it felt right, because each note seemed to fit perfectly with the one before it. There was a rhythm to her practice, a calm determination that spoke more than words ever could. Her classmates began to trickle in, carrying their own music books and instruments. They chatted, laughed, and sometimes even teased each other. She paid them little mind, focusing instead on the feel of the keys beneath her fingers. Sometimes a classmate would glance at her and wonder why she didn't try harder, why she didn't aim for the more difficult pieces. She only smiled politely, never explaining that she found beauty in simplicity, that she believed every note had its own importance. The piano she played was not new. Its keys were slightly worn, its sound not as bright as some of the newer instruments in the room. But she didn't care. In her hands, it seemed to sing with a clarity that surprised anyone who paused to listen. She could make it sound like a gentle whisper or a bold declaration, all without changing a single piece. Each practice session felt like a small adventure, a journey she took alone, but which seemed to carry meaning far beyond the four walls of the music room. As the morning passed, she continued her practice, moving through the familiar pieces with a quiet intensity. She didn't rush and she didn't linger. Each note received her full attention, as if she were speaking directly to it, asking it to reveal its own story. Occasionally, a teacher would glance over, nodding quietly in approval, perhaps sensing that there was something more beneath her calm exterior, something that might surprise everyone one day. One of her classmates, sitting across the room, watched her with curiosity. They had seen her play many times, always the same simple pieces, always with the same quiet dedication. They wondered if she ever felt the urge to try something more challenging, to show the world that she could handle complexity. But when they watched her hands move across the keys, they realized there was a power in her simplicity, a kind of skill that wasn't loud or showy but deeply precise. She seemed to know the piano in a way that went beyond technique, understanding it almost as if it were an extension of herself. During a break, she sat quietly at a window, watching the sunlight shift across the room. She thought about the music she would play next, choosing each piece not because it would impress anyone, but because it spoke to her. She liked the feeling of control, the sense that she could create something beautiful with just her hands and the piano. The world outside could wait. In that moment, nothing else mattered but the connection she felt with the instrument. Teachers often gave her small compliments, saying things like, "You have a good touch," or "Your timing is precise." She would smile and thank them, but she didn't let it change her. Praise was nice, but it was not the reason she played. She was learning, exploring, and discovering the depth of music in her own way. Every practice session added a layer of understanding, a new way to express what she felt inside. Sometimes, after her classmates left, she would stay behind to practice a little longer. The room would grow quiet again, the only sound the gentle tapping of her fingers on the keys. She didn't play for an audience. She played for herself, for the music, and for the small joy it brought her. Even the simplest notes could become something extraordinary when played with attention and care. One day, a teacher suggested that she try a slightly more advanced piece, something she hadn't attempted before. She agreed not because she wanted to prove herself, but because she wanted to see what the piece could offer. As she practiced, she felt the music flowing through her in a new way, each note connecting with the next, creating patterns and emotions she hadn't explored before. It was thrilling, even in small moments, to discover that her hands could do more than she had imagined. Her classmates didn't notice these small changes immediately. To them, she was still the quiet girl who played simple notes, content with modest melodies. But those who paid closer attention began to sense that there was more to her than met the eye. Her fingers moved with a confidence that wasn't flashy but precise, her timing perfect, her expression subtle yet powerful. It was the kind of skill that didn't announce itself loudly but demanded attention if one truly listened. By the end of the week, she had completed her practice, feeling satisfied and quietly proud. She knew she had improved, even if no one else realized it. The piano had become a trusted companion, a place where she could express herself fully, without judgment or expectation. In that quiet space, she was free to explore, to push boundaries in her own way, and to uncover the hidden depth of her own talent. Even though everyone expected her to stick to simple notes, she was preparing, in her own time, for something greater. She didn't need to announce it. She didn't need applause. All she needed was the connection she felt with the music, the thrill of discovering what her hands could do, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had a gift that was entirely her own. And in the weeks to come, that quiet dedication would surprise everyone, showing that true skill sometimes lies hidden beneath the simplest beginnings. The day came when she was asked to perform at the school's annual music showcase. It was a big deal, with parents, teachers, and students from other classes attending. Usually, the spotlight went to the more outgoing performers, those who chose complex pieces or flashy solos. Everyone expected her to play one of the simple pieces she always practiced. No one thought she would do anything different. She felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, knowing that this time, more eyes would be on her than ever before. She arrived early, as she always did, walking through the quiet hallways of the school. The echo of her footsteps made her heart beat a little faster. The auditorium was already buzzing with activity, students rehearsing, teachers checking arrangements, and parents finding their seats. She quietly made her way to the stage, carrying her sheet music, careful not to draw attention. Her mind focused on the piano, imagining the keys under her fingers, the way each note could sound, and how she wanted to feel when she played. Backstage, the other performers were chatting, laughing, and sometimes boasting about their skills. She listened politely but stayed in her quiet corner, going over the music in her head. The simple notes she was expected to play had always been comfortable, but she thought about adding something more. Just a little flourish, a small expression of the music she had kept to herself. She felt a thrill at the thought, even though it made her nervous. She didn't want to draw attention too soon, but something inside her was ready to be revealed. When her turn came, she walked to the piano with calm steps, her hands slightly trembling but her mind focused. The audience settled down, the room becoming still as she sat on the bench. The spotlight shone on her, making her heart pound in her chest. She opened the sheet music, pretending to read it carefully, while in reality, she already knew what she wanted to do. The first few notes came out simple and soft, exactly as everyone expected. She felt the audience relax, thinking this would be an ordinary performance, just like always. But then, almost imperceptibly, she began to add subtle changes. Her fingers moved more confidently, flowing over the keys in patterns that were not on the sheet. The music became richer, more expressive, and the simple notes transformed into something unexpected. The audience shifted in their seats, noticing the difference but not yet fully understanding what was happening. The teachers exchanged glances, surprised at the sudden depth in her playing. She had kept this part of herself hidden for so long, and now it was beginning to show. As she continued, the music grew bolder. She played faster in certain sections, adding dynamics that created tension and release. Each note seemed deliberate, carrying emotion and intention. Her hands moved effortlessly, almost as if they were telling a story that only she could hear. The audience, now leaning forward, started to feel the energy of the performance. Whispers of amazement spread through the room as they realized that this was no ordinary recital. Something remarkable was unfolding. She could feel the thrill building inside her. The fear she had felt backstage had melted into focus. She was in the moment completely, aware of the audience but not distracted by them. The music flowed through her, connecting her to every listener without a single word. She added small flourishes, soft trills, and sudden pauses that caught the audience by surprise. Each movement of her fingers seemed to reflect her personality, her emotions, and her dedication to the craft. She was no longer just playing the expected notes. She was creating an experience. Parents and teachers were now watching in disbelief. They had always known her as the quiet girl who played simple pieces, but this performance revealed a hidden depth. Her skill was not loud or showy, but precise, controlled, and filled with feeling. Some students looked on, mouths slightly open, realizing that they had underestimated her all this time. Her classmates who had practiced more challenging pieces might have thought they would impress the crowd the most, but now it was clear that her talent was exceptional in its own way. The music carried her through the piece, each section building on the last, creating a wave of sound that filled the auditorium. She felt the piano respond to her, almost like a partner in the performance. The notes were not just sounds. They were expressions of her patience, her focus, and her love for music. She smiled slightly, realizing that this moment was not about proving herself to anyone, but about sharing the music she had carried inside her for so long. By the time she reached the final section, her confidence had grown immensely. Her hands moved swiftly yet gracefully, and the audience could feel the intensity and care behind each note. The simple piece had been transformed into a powerful expression of her skill. The final chord resonated through the room, holding the attention of everyone present. For a moment, there was silence, as if the audience collectively held their breath, trying to take in what they had just witnessed. Then, applause erupted. It started softly but quickly grew into a loud, enthusiastic ovation. Teachers and parents stood, clapping and cheering. Some wiped tears from their eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected beauty of the performance. Her classmates looked at her with newfound respect, and even those who had doubted her skill could not hide their amazement. She had taken something simple and, through her dedication and passion, made it extraordinary. She bowed quietly, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. The audience's reaction was overwhelming, but what mattered most was the connection she had made through her music. She returned to her seat, her hands still tingling from the performance, and felt a warm sense of accomplishment. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, yet stayed true to herself, allowing her hidden talent to shine without fanfare or exaggeration. After the performance, teachers and even some visiting musicians came backstage to congratulate her. They praised her skill, her timing, and the emotion she brought to the piece. She smiled politely, feeling shy but also proud. She had known all along that she was capable of more than simple notes, and now others had finally seen it too. She didn't boast or draw attention to herself. She simply appreciated that the moment had been shared and understood by everyone present. That night, she went home feeling a quiet satisfaction. She thought about how much she had practiced, how many hours she had spent perfecting her touch and timing, all for moments like this. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Patience, focus, and passion were just as important. She felt grateful for the opportunity to perform, for the piano that had become a part of her life, and for the chance to reveal a part of herself that had remained hidden for so long. The experience changed something in her. She realized that even though people might underestimate her, she could surprise them when the time was right. She didn't need to shout or demand attention. Her skill would speak for itself, and the joy she felt from sharing her music with others was far greater than any recognition or praise. She went to bed that night thinking about the performance, her heart full of music, and a quiet excitement for what the future might bring. In the days that followed, the memory of that performance lingered. Students talked about it in the hallways, teachers mentioned it in passing, and some parents shared how moved they had been. She listened quietly to their words, not seeking praise but appreciating that her music had made an impact. She continued practicing, not to impress anyone, but to keep exploring, learning, and growing. The simple pieces she had once played now felt like stepping stones to something greater, and she was ready to discover just how far she could go. The next few weeks brought a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Word of her performance at the showcase had spread quietly but steadily. Teachers whispered to each other about the quiet girl who had taken a simple piece and transformed it into something extraordinary. Some students were curious, others a little envious, but everyone began to see her differently. She felt a quiet sense of responsibility, a need to honor the talent that had finally been noticed. Back in the music room, she resumed her practice with a renewed focus. She continued with the simple pieces she had always loved, but now she began experimenting with more challenging arrangements. Her hands moved with the same patience and care, but there was a newfound confidence, a willingness to explore areas she had once avoided. She tried pieces with faster rhythms, more complex chords, and subtle emotional shifts that required careful attention. Each day brought small victories, each note a step toward mastery. One afternoon, as she played a new piece, a teacher entered the room, watching her silently from the doorway. She noticed the slight smile on his face, a rare expression of genuine admiration. He waited until she finished before speaking, his words careful and thoughtful. "You are discovering a side of yourself that most people never see," he said. "Keep going. Don't be afraid to let your music speak even louder." She nodded quietly, her cheeks warming slightly. The encouragement meant more than any public applause. It wasn't about recognition or praise. It was about knowing that someone understood the depth of her dedication and the heart she put into her music. She felt a little lighter, more motivated, and more willing to take risks in her practice. Soon, another opportunity arrived. A regional music competition was announced, open to students who had shown exceptional skill in their school performances. Teachers suggested that she consider participating. The idea made her nervous. She had always avoided the spotlight, preferring quiet practice to public performance. Yet, a spark of curiosity ignited within her. She wondered what it would feel like to challenge herself on a bigger stage, to test the limits of her ability in front of a wider audience. She agreed to participate, not because she sought recognition, but because she wanted to see how far she could push herself. Over the next several weeks, she practiced intensely, choosing pieces that balanced technical challenge with emotional expression. She spent hours in the music room, experimenting with phrasing, dynamics, and tempo. Each session was a lesson in patience and discovery. She learned how to control her hands, how to communicate emotions through the keys, and how to stay focused under pressure. Her classmates noticed the change. She was still quiet and unassuming, but there was a new energy about her. She walked with purpose, spoke with quiet confidence, and her practice sessions took on a certain intensity that drew curious glances from others. Some of them began to ask questions, wanting to learn from her technique and approach. She answered politely, never boasting, simply sharing her love for the music. The day of the competition arrived. The auditorium was larger than the school stage, filled with an audience of students, parents, and music teachers from different schools. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, but it was accompanied by a growing sense of excitement. She had prepared, practiced, and explored her abilities. Now it was time to see how her music would resonate beyond the familiar walls of her school. Backstage, the other competitors were confident and talkative, showing off their skills and discussing the complexity of their chosen pieces. She listened quietly, feeling a mix of apprehension and calm determination. She did not compare herself to them, nor did she try to impress anyone with showy techniques. She simply focused on the music she had chosen, the notes that she knew could express her story and her emotions. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage, feeling the weight of the spotlight and the eyes of the audience on her. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began. The first notes were soft and simple, as expected, but gradually, her fingers moved with a precision and passion that drew the audience in. The music flowed naturally, carrying emotions that words could not capture. She had learned to trust herself, to let the piano guide her hands, and to communicate through sound alone. The audience was captivated. At first, they listened curiously, unsure of what to expect. Then, as the music grew in complexity and depth, they leaned forward, drawn into the story she was telling. The subtle flourishes, the careful dynamics, and the emotional resonance made it clear that this was not a typical performance. Teachers and judges exchanged impressed glances, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. She felt a surge of confidence as she played, the initial nerves replaced by focus and joy. Every chord, every transition, every pause was deliberate. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting her emotions guide her hands. It was a performance that combined technical skill with heartfelt expression, and she could sense that the audience was responding, swept along by the intensity and beauty of the sound. As the piece reached its climax, she played with a freedom and energy that surprised even her. The music became more powerful, more expressive, and she felt an incredible connection to the audience. Their reactions were almost tangible, a shared understanding that transcended words. She was no longer just performing notes. She was telling a story, inviting everyone to experience it with her. When she reached the final chord, the room was silent for a brief, awe-filled moment. Then, applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than she had ever heard. Standing ovations, cheers, and clapping filled the auditorium. She bowed quietly, a smile of quiet pride and satisfaction on her face. The judges, teachers, and audience members were clearly moved by her performance, recognizing the skill, dedication, and emotional depth she had displayed. After the competition, she received congratulations from teachers, fellow competitors, and even some of the audience members. They praised her technical skill, her interpretation, and the way she had transformed the expected simple piece into something remarkable. She accepted the praise with humility, feeling both grateful and motivated. The experience reinforced her belief that music was about expression and connection, not just technical ability or recognition. In the days that followed, she reflected on the performance and the journey that had brought her there. She realized how much she had grown, how her quiet dedication and patient practice had prepared her for this moment. She also recognized the importance of taking risks, of stepping out of her comfort zone, and of allowing herself to explore the full extent of her talent. The experience had changed her perspective, giving her the confidence to pursue even greater challenges. She continued practicing, now with a sense of purpose and anticipation. She explored more advanced pieces, experimented with her own arrangements, and sought ways to convey emotion through every note. She felt a growing sense of mastery, not just over the piano, but over her own ability to express herself through music. Each session was a chance to discover something new, to refine her skills, and to connect more deeply with the instrument she loved. Her classmates and teachers noticed the transformation. The quiet girl who had once played only simple pieces had become a musician with confidence, skill, and presence. They watched as she practiced with focus and dedication, as she took on challenges that others might have avoided. She remained humble, never seeking attention for herself, but her growth was undeniable. She had found her voice through the piano, and it spoke more powerfully than words ever could. The experience of the competition left a lasting impact on her. She understood that true skill and passion could not be hidden for long, and that when nurtured with patience and dedication, talent could shine in unexpected ways. She also learned that music was not just about performing for others, but about expressing oneself and connecting with others through sound. The journey was as important as the destination, and she felt ready to continue exploring the endless possibilities that awaited her in the world of music. After the competition, the reaction to her performance continued to grow. People talked about it quietly at first, in hallways and music rooms, sharing their amazement with friends and colleagues. But soon, word spread more widely. Teachers mentioned it during staff meetings, parents discussed it during pickup, and even students from other classes who had not been at the competition had heard about the quiet girl who had surprised everyone. She felt a mixture of pride and shyness. She had never sought attention, and now it was following her in ways she had not anticipated. Her next few days were filled with a mixture of normal routines and unexpected recognition. Teachers stopped her in the hallway to ask how she was feeling, complimenting her on her performance. Fellow students approached her, asking questions about her practice and the techniques she had used. Some wanted tips, while others simply wanted to express their admiration. She listened politely, sometimes offering small insights, but she did not let the attention overwhelm her. It was new and slightly intimidating, but also motivating. She wanted to continue growing, not because of recognition, but because she loved the music and the feeling of expressing herself through it. Her family was proud but careful not to pressure her. They understood that her joy came from the music itself, not from accolades or applause. They encouraged her to keep practicing, to explore new pieces, and to continue finding her voice through the piano. She felt supported, knowing that she could pursue her passion at her own pace, without the burden of expectations that often followed public recognition. This balance allowed her to continue her journey with confidence and curiosity. Soon, she received an invitation from a local music group to perform at a community event. The organizers had heard about her competition performance and wanted her to share her talent with a broader audience. She felt nervous at first. The thought of playing for a larger and unfamiliar crowd made her stomach flutter. But there was also a quiet excitement. She realized this was another opportunity to explore her abilities and to connect with people through music, which had always been her main motivation. In the days leading up to the event, she practiced with focus and care. She selected pieces that showcased both her technical skill and her emotional expression. Each session in the music room was deliberate and thoughtful. She explored the dynamics of each piece, experimenting with soft whispers of sound and bold, resonant chords. She discovered new ways to communicate emotions through the piano, learning how even small changes in tempo or touch could evoke powerful feelings. Her dedication paid off, as each practice session brought more confidence and understanding. The day of the performance arrived, and she stepped onto the stage in the community hall. The room was filled with people she had never seen before. Faces turned toward her in anticipation. She felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but also a growing sense of determination. She took her seat at the piano, adjusted her posture, and allowed herself to focus completely on the music. The first notes came softly, gradually unfolding into more complex passages. She played with a combination of precision and emotion, guiding the audience through the story hidden in the music. As she continued, the audience became captivated. The subtle changes in dynamics, the careful phrasing, and the emotional resonance drew them in. People leaned forward in their seats, listening intently, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the sound. Her fingers moved fluidly across the keys, each note deliberate and expressive. The room was silent except for the music, and in that silence, she felt a profound connection with every listener. She realized that this was the essence of her passion, creating moments that touched others without needing words. By the time she reached the climax of her performance, her confidence had fully blossomed. The music grew in power and intensity, expressing emotions that transcended the notes themselves. She allowed herself to fully inhabit the piece, letting the piano respond naturally to her movements and intentions. The audience could feel the depth of her dedication, the hours of practice, and the love she had for the instrument. This performance was no longer just about playing well. It was about sharing a part of herself through sound. The final chord resonated, filling the room with a lingering echo. For a brief moment, there was complete silence, as if everyone was collectively absorbing what they had experienced. Then, applause erupted, spontaneous and heartfelt. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The recognition was overwhelming, but she remained composed, bowing quietly with a smile. She felt joy, not from the applause itself, but from the connection she had made, the understanding that her music had reached the hearts of others. After the performance, several community leaders and teachers came backstage to express their admiration. They praised her skill, her emotional expression, and the way she had transformed simple pieces into something extraordinary. Some offered her opportunities to perform at other events or to work with experienced musicians who could help her develop further. She listened attentively, grateful for the recognition but determined not to lose sight of why she played. For the music itself, for the emotions it could convey, and for the personal satisfaction it brought. In the following days, she reflected on the experience. She realized that recognition and opportunity were natural outcomes of dedication and passion, but they were not the purpose. The true reward was the ability to express herself and to connect with others through her music. She understood that the applause and admiration were a reflection of the honesty and effort she put into each note, and this understanding gave her a deeper sense of confidence and purpose. Her classmates and teachers continued to notice the transformation in her. She was still quiet and modest, but there was a new depth to her playing, a richness that spoke of both skill and emotion. People who had once underestimated her now looked at her with respect and curiosity. Some approached her for advice, wanting to learn from her approach and discipline. She shared what she could, always encouraging others to find their own voice through the music, rather than simply trying to copy hers. The experience also taught her important lessons about courage and taking risks. She had stepped onto unfamiliar stages, faced new audiences, and allowed herself to reveal talent that she had kept private for so long. Each time she took a risk, she discovered something new about herself and her abilities. She learned that stepping out of comfort zones could lead to growth, that the music could become a bridge between her and others, and that even a quiet, unassuming person could make a powerful impact when they let their true skill shine. She continued to practice with renewed purpose, exploring more advanced pieces and experimenting with her own arrangements. Each session became a journey of discovery, teaching her patience, focus, and emotional expression. She also began to mentor younger students, quietly guiding them to find their own connection with the music. She encouraged them to explore, to take risks, and to appreciate the joy of creating something meaningful. Through all of this, she remained grounded and humble. She knew that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, patience, and love for the craft were equally important. She understood that recognition would come naturally when she stayed true to herself and her passion. Each performance, each practice session, and each connection with the music reinforced her belief that the most important aspect of being a musician was not the applause, but the ability to communicate and express something deeply human. Her journey was far from over. The community performance had opened new doors, given her opportunities, and brought attention to her talent, but she was focused on continuing to grow and explore. She looked forward to future performances, competitions, and collaborations, not for the sake of recognition, but for the chance to deepen her understanding of music and to share that understanding with others. She felt a quiet excitement for the possibilities ahead, knowing that every note she played was a step toward discovering her full potential. In the weeks and months that followed, she continued to perform, practice, and refine her skills. Each experience reinforced the lessons she had learned about patience, courage, and the power of music. She realized that true impact came not from trying to impress, but from expressing oneself honestly and passionately. Her story spread quietly, inspiring others to pursue their own talents with dedication and love. And through it all, she remained herself, a quiet, determined musician whose simple beginnings had blossomed into a skill and expression that could move anyone who listened. Months passed, and her reputation as a gifted pianist continued to grow. The quiet girl who had once been expected to play only simple notes was now known for performances that captivated everyone who heard her. Invitations to perform at local events, community gatherings, and even regional showcases arrived more frequently. She approached each opportunity with her usual calm, focusing on the music itself rather than the attention she received. It was never about applause. It was always about the connection she could create through her playing. She spent her days in the music room, experimenting with new pieces and refining her skills. Some pieces were technically challenging, requiring careful practice and repeated attempts to master. Others were emotionally complex, demanding sensitivity and expression. She enjoyed both equally, knowing that every piece added to her understanding and growth. She no longer felt limited by expectations. She knew that her dedication and love for music could carry her further than anyone had imagined. One day, a teacher approached her with an idea. A visiting pianist, known for international performances, would be giving a masterclass at the school. The teacher suggested that she attend, and even offered her the chance to perform a piece for the master. She felt nervous at the thought, unsure if she was ready to play for someone of such renown. But curiosity and determination outweighed her hesitation. She agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow, not to prove herself. The day of the masterclass arrived, and the room was filled with students, teachers, and the visiting pianist. She watched as others performed, noticing the techniques, interpretations, and confidence of the students. When her turn came, she approached the piano, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. She took a deep breath, centered herself, and began to play. The music flowed naturally, combining technical skill with emotional depth. Each note carried intention, and she felt the audience respond to the story within the music. The visiting pianist paused occasionally, nodding in appreciation. By the end of her piece, the room erupted in applause, and the master spoke words of praise, highlighting her precision, expression, and ability to communicate emotion through the piano. She felt a quiet sense of pride, not from the recognition, but from knowing that her dedication and careful practice had prepared her for this moment. She realized that her journey was not about competition or comparison, but about the mastery and expression she could achieve through persistent effort. Encouraged by the experience, she continued exploring new horizons in music. She began to compose small pieces of her own, experimenting with melody, rhythm, and harmony. Each composition reflected her personality, her emotions, and her understanding of music as a language. She shared some pieces with teachers and fellow students, receiving feedback and encouragement. Her compositions were simple yet expressive, showing that even a young musician with modest beginnings could create something original and meaningful. Her classmates who had once underestimated her now looked at her with admiration. They noticed her discipline, patience, and creativity, realizing that talent alone was not enough without dedication. Some sought her advice, asking how she approached practice, expression, and interpretation. She responded with humility, sharing her methods and encouraging them to find their own connection with the music. She emphasized the importance of understanding the emotions behind each note, of practicing consistently, and of remaining patient with oneself. As she performed in more events and showcases, her confidence grew. She was no longer nervous about stepping onto a stage or facing an unfamiliar audience. Instead, she saw each performance as an opportunity to share a piece of herself, to create moments of connection through music. She continued to play with precision and expression, taking care with each note, and experimenting with dynamics and timing to enhance the emotional impact of her performances. One evening, she was invited to perform at a regional concert where several talented pianists from different schools would gather. The audience was large and diverse, including professional musicians, teachers, and families. She felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was accompanied by excitement and anticipation. She had prepared thoroughly, and she trusted her ability to express herself through the music. As she sat at the piano, she felt the keys under her fingers and allowed herself to become fully immersed in the piece. The performance was mesmerizing. She started with gentle, simple notes, gradually introducing more complexity and depth. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and grace, conveying emotion and storytelling through the music. The audience was captivated, leaning forward in their seats, absorbed in the beauty and intensity of her playing. Some closed their eyes, allowing themselves to feel the music deeply. It was not just a performance. It was an experience shared between the pianist and everyone present. By the final notes, the audience was completely engaged, and when she finished, applause filled the room. Some people rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, clearly moved by the performance. Teachers and fellow musicians approached her, offering congratulations and expressing their admiration. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her music had touched people's hearts, and that the dedication she had invested over the years had produced results far beyond what anyone had expected. After the concert, she reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the quiet mornings in the school music room, the hours spent practicing simple pieces, and the small moments of discovery that had gradually built her skill and confidence. She understood that her journey was about more than public recognition. It was about persistence, passion, and the ability to communicate through music. She felt grateful for the opportunities she had been given and for the chance to express herself in a way that was uniquely her own. As the months continued, she balanced performances, practice, and composing her own pieces. She mentored younger students, sharing her knowledge and encouraging them to explore music with patience and curiosity. She remained humble, focused on the joy of playing and the connection it created, rather than seeking fame or accolades. Her journey became an example to others, showing that dedication, passion, and quiet persistence could transform talent into something truly remarkable. Her music continued to evolve, becoming more nuanced and expressive. She experimented with different styles, combining technical precision with emotional storytelling. Each performance, whether for a small gathering or a large audience, carried the essence of her journey, the patience, practice, and love for the music that had grown within her from the very beginning. People who heard her play spoke of the depth and feeling in her music, often describing it as moving and inspiring. Looking back, she realized that the moments when she had been underestimated, when expectations were low, had been essential to her growth. Those moments allowed her to develop her skill quietly, explore her abilities without pressure, and discover the true depth of her talent. They had shaped her approach to music, teaching her patience, humility, and the importance of connecting with the music itself. She understood that the fire she had discovered in her own skill was not about impressing others but about expressing her own truth through the piano. Her story spread quietly, inspiring those around her to pursue their own passions with dedication and love. She had shown that even someone expected to do only the simplest tasks could rise to remarkable heights through patience, focus, and passion. Her journey was a testament to the idea that talent combined with consistent effort and genuine expression could create moments of magic, moments that left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed them. In the end, she continued to play, explore, and grow, always seeking new ways to express herself and share the beauty of music. Her performances became not just displays of skill but expressions of her heart, connecting with audiences in ways that transcended words. She remained humble, patient, and dedicated, knowing that the journey of music was endless, and that every note she played was a step toward deeper understanding and greater expression. And through it all, she knew that the quiet girl who had once been expected to play only simple notes had discovered the fire within herself, a fire that would continue to burn brightly, inspiring and moving everyone who listened.